Yes, I'm coming to you today. Want to speak to you about the murder of George Floyd. I know a lot of different people been talking about this, and a man in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who evidently, from what we understand, they thought that he was maybe a suspect of forgery or mishandling some money in some type of way, be it as it may, regardless of what the issues may be, the man was unarmed, the man was subdued, and there was not one, not two, not three, but four officers involved. And as we could see, when the recording was going on, he was saying, "I can't breathe." One gentleman, excuse me, I won't even call him a gentleman. He was a psychotic, murdering monster, is what he is. He's just a psychopath, drunk on power, pressing his knee into the man's neck, into his artery turned sideways, cutting off his air, which you need air and oxygen to get to the brain, and if you're not getting that within a certain amount of time, then eventually you will die. And so he was slipping away. He was able to speak, but he wasn't receiving oxygen back in. And so therefore, as he was gasping for and having his last words, you started to see blood in the video come from his nose, until finally he was gone. I want to come at this from a couple of different angles, and I want to address this from a situation that, we do have an issue with police brutality. And I will say this, that there are a lot of good officers out there, but it's always these jerkhead, crazy psychopath officers that don't deserve to be an officer, who gets picked and selected to be a police officer, who has something out for a particular race, or has just drunk on power to where they don't care what color you are. They're just abuse their authority. But in this case, another innocent black man, I would say in this situation, the situation was greatly mishandled. It was greatly mishandled, and you took a man's life. It was wrong. And so these four officers have been fired, yet because they were in compliance with the officer that did cause his death, I feel personally that all of them should be held as accomplices to murder. And not only that, the gentleman who stayed on his neck and would not let go, abusing his authority, using excessive force, he should be tried for life in prison. Some others are asking for the death penalty. I mean, that's up to whoever. But I think he needs to spend the rest of his life behind bars, honestly. Regardless of what the man was suspected to be guilty of, or even guilty of. That, listen, once the police officers crossed that threshold, then everything else was out the window. Now, you look at Eric Garner in New York. Even though there may be some things he was guilty of, the way, again, that they handled that situation. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. As a first responder, which police officers are, they're supposed to also not only subdue, but they are to also make sure that they are handling the suspect carefully. Because if they're not handling the suspect carefully, then they can cause that person's death, which in the case of Eric Garner and now George Floyd, they have another 2 black men's life gone because officers drunk on power. Now, let me say this. Are there good officers? Yes, there are. There's bad people in all type of professions. There's bad policemen. There's good policemen. There's good doctors. There's horrible, bad doctors. There's good pastors and ministers. There's some that's not so good. They're in it for the wrong reasons. But when you constantly see, and the media does play its part, don't get me wrong. There's many times when white folks have been abused by officers, or it may be vice versa, and you don't see that shown. But whenever it's a person of color, they make sure they show that to incite us to anger as a black community. You see, they don't show the white folks that are being abused by other white officers, or maybe if it was a black officer, but that's very rare. But they don't show anything like last week, a young black man who was working in a nursing home who was beating up white folks, old white people in a nursing care home. And the young black gentleman was, I believe, a Golden Gloves boxer. And he said he wanted to teach white folks a lesson. And this happened in, I believe, Michigan, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Empress, is in charge of. And the media didn't give attention to that. Now, let it been a white person beating up old black folks in a nursing home, it would have gained national attention. So I do understand the media has a lot to play when it comes to inciting us to anger and rallying us up to be pissed. Okay, but let me say this: right is right and wrong is wrong. And in this case, just like others we've seen, and I use Eric Garner as an example, the Minneapolis police force was wrong. And so the mayor not only fired these 4 police officers, but there's also an FBI investigation, which the President Trump said there needs to be an FBI investigation into this, and rightfully so. And so we, as a community, now I'm speaking to the black community. It seems like when some things happen and we get angry, we go and we tear up different stores and local communities and stuff like that. And I heard one young lady say, and during the situation in St. Louis, where the other young gentleman was shot, she said, "Don't go tear up our neighborhoods. Go tear up their neighborhoods. Go tear up their stuff. We need our stuff." Paraphrasing. Now, I'm not saying go do violence at all and go tear up stuff, but see, because of this and what has happened, you have awakened a sleeping beast. And now you see police cars being tore up. You see targets being destroyed. You see people having a free-for-all. But when we as a community go off into these stores and looting and destroying businesses and acting like savages, it hurts our cause. And it almost make it looks like it's shifting from justice for the victim to a free-for-all for ourselves. And we have to keep in mind that if we want to get a message across, we can get a message across without destroying and tearing up every single thing. This is what we have to understand. We have to, people of faith, churches, pastors who speak on these issues, is not to teach hate for another race, but to also make sure, we want to be aware and make people aware of certain things like issues of this matter. But we also want to continue to keep people in the human race knit together in a perfect bond of love and unity. Because as children of God, as people of God, as Christians, and as spiritual leaders, pastors, you have to keep people together in love, not infuse hatred, not to stir division. You can be angry. You can ask for justice. But it's how we handle things. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27, I believe, 27, 28. It says, be angry, but sin not. Let not the sun go down on your anger. Neither let the sun go down on your anger. So it's one thing to be angry, but it's another thing what we do with the anger. What comes behind the anger? How are we going to handle the issue at hand? So we need to be praying. We need to speak about these issues, not shy away from them, but we also have to handle them in a way to where it's going to be productive and not counterproductive to us as a community and send the wrong message. Because that's what it's all about now. We lost another innocent life for no reason. So let's keep the family of this gentleman. I understand he worked for the Salvation Army, or did voluntary work for the Salvation Army, and he also had some young children. So let's pray for the family of George Floyd, and pray that justice is served. Take care.